Pick me up off the floor I've fallen down.
A clinical psychologist as well, and you're a good one. And you also happen to be my husband, for those of you that are new here as well. And I love him dearly. All right. And you're nodding. Yes, she does. Yes, she loves me.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So how did we get here? Why are we doing another episode?
Oh my God, that made me so uncomfortable. Oh my gosh. So uncomfortable. We've got to watch that again. I got to be uncomfortable like that again. What the F did we just watch?
To the YouTube video in the description of this video, as well as some sources we'll be using tonight. So from there, we are now on week 2 because, John, I can't say that you didn't cause quite a bit of reaction, good and bad.
Look at him.
Ugly.
He's so proud of himself. I caused the reaction. I am the reaction. Because, you know, we know what his reactions are, right? Remember this?
It's about the fact that years ago when that person cut me off, she could not handle my vulnerability and my raw emotion, and I'm still pissed. Years later, I'm pissed that somebody cut me off when I was going to answer my question. In probably the most vulnerable way I could ever answer a question.
I'm the victim! Remember? I'm the victim! And that's what Lauren's saying to him. It's not about you, Dr. Babe. It's all about me.
And intense from many viewers. Over 1,000 comments on our last video of people with very strong opinions about this case because it's an old case and people have already made up their minds about this
Good
case.
morning.
And I just want to say you're brave to take on an older case where people have already formed their opinions, but that's what you do. You're a criminal psychologist, a clinical psychologist as well, and you're a good one. And you also happen to be my husband, for those of you that are new here as well. And I love him dearly. All right. And you're nodding. Yes, she does. Yes, she loves me.
Yeah, no, he's not. He's not, Lauren. I don't know what the F that just was, but it made me even more uncomfortable the second time. And I would say let's watch it again, but we got to keep it moving.
Yeah. So how did we get here? Why are we doing another episode? And the reason is I had not finished watching the Prison Confession series, so I finished that. And then we talked to a few people that know the family and know the case fairly well, and that's been helpful. So, and we keep digging a little deeper into this case, and it keeps getting more complex and more interesting. So I think we wanted to just really kind of dig a little deeper into this case. And just as a quick disclaimer here, I think this is going to be a pretty high level discussion. It may be a little more philosophical and abstract at times than we normally are. And I think some of you would probably say, well, you're pretty philosophical anyway, but it might be more.
Dr. Jan, you're so philosophical. You philosophize all the time. It's just like, pontification. It's just, you're a blowhard.
So tonight, another disclaimer, some of the things we're going to talk about may not fit the popular narrative of Gypsy Rose. And we're going to talk about what that is exactly. I sometimes call that the standard story, or now I'm calling it the fairy tale version. It's the version that Gypsy Rose perpetuates. Oh. And having said that, I want to make it clear that
is Dr. Jan onto something?
I have a lot of empathy for Gypsy Rose. There's no question there was child maltreatment in her past. I think there are questions about the extent of the maltreatment. There's questions now about some of the surgical procedures that she underwent, the medication she took. There's a lot of questions about a lot of things here, but in terms of abuse and maltreatment, I think we can all agree on that. I think most of us can agree that Dee Dee was abusive, and she was.
We can't agree on that. We can't because it's been researched that Gypsy Rose tried to unalive her mother not once, not twice, but 3 times. So who was being abused? It was found out that Dee Dee was very sick and she was, in fact, needing a wheelchair towards the end. Who was being abused? It was found that Gypsy Rose's mother, Dee Dee, was looking into those, you send them away to Utah type of camps for Gypsy Rose Blanchard because she was out of control. But
overbearing, and she was controlling, and she was not an ideal parent. So I guess I'll try to find some common ground before we start here. But
yeah, trigger warning. I think that was a great trigger warning. I already hear people in comments. One of our dear listeners is saying, you know what, they can't read or hear anything that might be negative about Gypsy. That's okay. But there is going to be a lot of nuance in this conversation and a lot of gray. So if that is how you feel, please understand and be ready for some things that you might not always agree on here.
Yeah. And on that issue, somebody sent, we received a lot of emails that
I wonder, is this a video or is this a live? Do we have yes, we have. I'm just curious what the chat replay is like at this point in their lives. Are they doing so much moderation as they have to do now? Well, obviously we know they're not, but like what kind of comments got through back in the day?
They were kind. Thank you for being kind. They disagreed with us. That's fine. I encourage disagreement.
You can disagree with them as long as they deem it as being kind. Ooh, there's a Victoria's Secret 111 in there. No. He's in the Victoria's Secret's owner is in the Epstein files.
Agreement. That's part of our goal here is to really have conversations. So I appreciate some were not kind, some were fairly brutal, but that's part of this too. So one of the emails that someone sent, who she was very kind about it, and she's a longtime listener, and she questioned a lot of our analysis. But one of the things she said was, "Oh
my gosh, somebody questioned your analysis and got away with it? Like you allowed somebody to do that? Because the last person who did that..."
It's about the fact that years ago when that person cut me off, she could not handle my vulnerability and my raw emotion, and I'm still pissed.
Come and knock on our door. Come and knock on our door. Waiting for you.
Come and knock on our door.
Dr. John, you're not saying she should have done more time or she should be punished more. You're not saying she's a risk to reoffend or murder again.
Hey guys, if you could be sure to give this live a thumbs up. I forgot to ask you to do that. Helps us dance out into the algorithm, party out there, bring more people back. It's just a free way to help me out, and it's really, really appreciated. Today we're coming to you on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. This is a Building the Case with my dragonflies. This is where I build up the week's cases. We're looking at Hidden True Crime and the Gypsy Rose Blanchard case because I'm doing a creator panel on this week, and you're getting a peek at what we'll be working on this week. So if you could show us love on the platform that you're viewing us on, it would be really, really appreciated.
And you're talking a lot about her dark side. So she said, I don't really get the purpose. What's your point here? What's your end game? And
good morning.
It's an interesting question, because I think my answer to that is there really is no end game here, in the sense that I'm not trying to develop an opinion. I'm not trying to provide a perfect explanation. I'm not trying to develop the true reasons or causes for these crimes. I think what I'm trying to do here is to explore, and I'm trying to provide an honest assessment of the situation. And I'm trying to, in that sense, I'm trying to open a dialogue about what's going on. So my end game here is to provide some depth.
We can see that they're definitely getting their money here. Somebody has already donated some memberships. We got $4.99.
Complexity to this case, and to develop a meaningful conversation about what's going on. And tonight, I've got two questions I want to look at tonight. Number one, what are the competing narratives related to Gypsy Rose and why she did what she did? What are the competing narratives? So when we start getting into this issue of competing narratives, I think we'll all see that this is extremely complex. And so my goal here my end game is to illuminate and to explore. It's not to provide with any certainty an opinion about Gypsy Rose or what really happened or the true motivations. And we're going to get into that. And that's where our high level discussion is going to start, because there's really no clear cause. There's no causality here. There's no clear reasons for these murders. Although many of the people that disagreed with us, I think that's the reason why, because they want something that's succinct and it's an opinion and it makes sense and it explains this whole situation. And I think one of my points here tonight is, if you want that simple narrative, that's fully explanatory, you're not going to get that tonight. That's not my goal. My goal here is to really dig a little deeper into this discussion. And if we're lucky, if I'm lucky, hopefully we'll illuminate some of the complexity here, but we're certainly not going to solve it.
Our goal is to rake in at least $500 tonight. That's our goal.
So one of the things I really appreciate about our community and our gems is that they understand this. They understand that a lot of the crimes we cover involve a certain level of uncertainty and complexity. And oftentimes certain crimes might have what I would call a more coherent narrative thread. And in that sense, I feel like most of the evidence will point to one or two kind of narratives. But here, there's no one or two narratives that dominate this conversation. And I think that's part of the issue. For those people who have followed this case from the beginning, they probably have very strong opinions. And in that sense, they're probably wedded to those opinions to some degree. And there's probably some degree of confirmation bias in that sense. So I would just ask people to be open. Let's have this conversation together. We can certainly agree to disagree. For those people that were less kind, I mean, that's fine too. I understand that there can be a certain amount of anger here because this is such a sense.
Dr. Yan, are you not wedded to your opinions? I don't see any open-minded on either one of your guys' parts. So you are suggesting to the audience stuff that you are unwilling to do yourself. That's why I think this is a real issue with platforming somebody who says they have this degree and they're saying, I just think that we should all agree with me. Just, open your ears and your mind, please. And we'll get along just fine.
Sensitive topic. We've all seen the pictures of Gypsy. The pictures are all horrifying. I think the pictures speak for themselves in many cases. But the pictures are not the full story either. So I would just ask that we kind of keep an open mind here.
Yeah, the pictures are horrifying, but I wouldn't say the pictures speak for themselves because we've learned that the whole world is feeding us pictures and they're desensitizing us, but also they are making us think things that aren't true. And you, Dr. Yan, who is supposed to be this clinical, think outside of the box, know everything kind of guy, is actually just feeding us a mainstream narrative and you're telling us to go along with it. And be nice about it.
And we'll see where we go. I want to get into a really meaningful Q&A towards the end and we'll, have a discussion. So hopefully we have a lot of material to cover tonight. So in that sense, we'll see how far we can go with it, but hopefully we can cover most of what I can cover, most of what I want to cover, and then we can get into the Q&A. So let me reiterate that the two questions I really want to look at tonight are, what are the competing narratives to explain this crime? And I pointed out in our last show that there's really two versions of Gypsy Rose. There's the version of Gypsy Rose that's the victim. And I think most of us agree upon the fact that there was maltreatment.
Stop saying that.
And then there's Gypsy Rose.
No, John. I am, okay. All right. This is I got to go on my soapbox. Help me up, somebody. Help me up. This is one of my pet peeves of the day. When people say, I think we can all agree. No, don't put that shit on me. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not agreeing with anybody at this point in my life. So, John, stop saying that. Okay, I'm getting down.
Murderer. And I think in some ways, those are quite different people, or they can be quite different people. There is a tie. We'll talk about that. But I think it's important to make that distinction. And the question here, because this is a true crime channel, the question here, of course, is, were there crimes committed?
Yes, I do know that. Today, I decided to try the various AIs I said I would, and I used Grok. I don't like it. Didn't like it. It didn't do anything. It lied to me for a full 2 hours. I've used it and I won't use it again. And I can tell that it's definitely programmed by a certain someone. Yeah. Sorry, I'm a little high strung right now because of this. Let me calm myself down. I just got a lot of passion in me.
In terms of Dee Dee maltreating or abusing Gypsy Rose, yes, of course, but we're not analyzing Dee Dee necessarily. We're acknowledging that there was abuse, but Dee Dee is not really the focus. The question is, how does Gypsy Rose go from being a victim of abuse to committing murder? Or does she? One of Gypsy's narratives now, by the way, is that she is not a murderer. So we'll consider that too. So Gypsy Rose, as of her release from prison, is now essentially saying that she was involved in the plot to murder her mother, but she doesn't see herself as being a murderer. So that's an interesting evolution in her thought.
That's an interesting double talk there. It sounds a lot like what's happening in our government. I saw the other day, I forget who it was, but they were saying, like, what are you going to do if these people aren't prosecuted? Nothing. There's absolutely, and this was a guy that should be prosecuted. He's like, what are you going to do? Like, really, what are you going to do? And the person was like, well, I don't know. And he's like, exactly. They're counting on us to go back to sleep and to stay comfortable. And they're telling us that if we prosecute everybody, the system will fall. Well, let the system fall. Let us be a little uncomfortable so that we can save the kids and the women and to get rid of the biggest PDF ring of the world. And don't think that it's just in the United States. Okay. Sorry, Judy. Don't just think it's in the United States, my friends, because it's not. It's the whole effing world. It's us against them. And if you don't find kids attractive, then you're us.
And we need to really discuss that. So, again, the two questions are, what are the competing narratives in play to explain these crimes? And my second question is, who's to blame?
I just lost you.
Okay.
Oh, it's my earphones.
Oh
Keep
my
going.
gosh. There she is, ever the insightful one who adds to the conversation, huh? What's Dr. Yon drinking? Some probably not Diet Coke or Diet Coke, which is even worse for you.
I think everyone can hear you. It's just me. I'll fix it. Keep going.
It's your AirPods. Okay. So the second question I want to look at is who's to blame. And I think by
See, this is back in the day before they blew up too hot big, I think, because Dr. Yon is still in his comb over non-toner era. And what is this? I cannot, like, I guess Temu Sheen era. It's very Temu Sheen that she's wearing. So this was before. This was before the 9.5-hour live.
Analyzing and considering these two questions, we're going to really develop a better understanding of this case, and we're probably going to go a long way towards towards really digging deeper and really understanding more about what's going on here.
Also, how many minutes we're into this? 14 minutes, and has he really said anything? Has he said anything, you guys? I mean, I know he said a lot, but has he said anything? I don't think so.
So let me start. I'm going to start with, I'm going to read. I'm laughing because I promised a high level discussion. So we're going to start with Shakespeare. I'm reading from the opening scene of Shakespeare. So this is Act 1, Scene 1 from Macbeth.
Oh,
The
Lord.
scene begins with thunder and lightning.
Oh,
And
Lord. How did we get here? How did we get to Macbeth? Oh. Well, I mean, he does like his thought experiments, so let's put our thought experiment tinfoil hats on, and here we go, Macbeth. Take it away, John.
and enter the three witches. So I'm reading the last line, which is
Oh, God.
lines
the three
12 and
witches.
13, Act 1, Scene 1. The witches are together, and they say together, quote, "Fair is foul, and foul is fair. Hover through the fog and filthy air." So let me read that again. Fair is foul, and foul is fair. Hover through the fog and filthy air. So
What is she so delighted by? We've got to look over here because she is really reading the chat. Great sound. We can hear John. I hear John. Also, prior to Dee Dee's murder, Gypsy herself said she had to try to shoot her and in fact did, but it was BB gun. Yeah, that happened. What is she so delighted in, though? She's like really enjoying chat. Maybe it's the money.
I'm beginning with that quote from Shakespeare for a number of reasons, but let me just say that when I picture the witches saying that, this idea of the fog and the filthy air, it kind of reminds me, I think it kind of sets the stage for our discussion, because it tends to remind me a little bit, like I think of kind of the Louisiana bayou and the mist and the fog, right?
Lord.
And that, like there's kind of this,
Lordy, Dr. John's been reading too many of Gypsy Rose's Flowers in the Attic novels, or the Ruby stuff. Dr. Jan is in Hollywood. He's constructing his Hollywood story around this. Who do you think is going to play Ryan Anderson? Brad Pitt?
this fog, I think, surrounding this case, or there has been. And so it kind of, for me, this is evocative of kind of this whole setting for Gypsy Rose growing up in Louisiana and the bayou. And so I think that's an interesting way to set the stage for this discussion. The other part, however, is more relevant, and that is that the idea of fair is foul and foul is fair suggests that nothing is as it seems. That this is the idea of reversal. That Shakespeare is kind of saying that.
Is she even listening to him? I'm having a hard time listening to him, but is she even listening to him?
Things are never quite what they seem, and so I think that's very accurate here in this case.
What the frick is she looking at in chat? What is it? What is it? Tell me. Like, right? Let's see. What is it? I think GR is setting herself up for disaster. She has offered therapy on multiple occasions. She refused it. At Hidden True Crime, Lauren, I absolutely love you. Thank you for being such a glue and amazing reporter. In my humble opinion, the movie industry circled her like vultures. That poor little Gypsy Rose. Yeah, I don't know what she's so enticed with in here, because, I mean, I think this was even before Gray Bay, because I don't even see Gray Bay in here. Do we recognize anybody? No, we don't.
That there's questions around everything. There's questions around who does what, when, whether there's complicity. There's questions about, do any of these medical conditions really exist? There's so many questions. What was Gypsy's level of involvement in the murders? But as long as we're talking about witchcraft, I'm going to talk about my first narrative to explain this case. And I promise you, this is a narrative that nobody else has talked about. So,
I wonder if he's about to go into the Flowers in the Attic narrative that we covered, where Gypsy Rose is writing her own Southern Gothic novel. Is Dr. John going to get this deep?
So you're only going to get this analysis on Hidden True Crime. So thanks for joining us tonight. But
oh boy,
I think that the first narrative that I want to talk about is this, to explain this case, is a narrative that has to do with witchcraft. So the three witches from Macbeth are completely relevant, because it turns out that Dee
has no idea where he's going with this. I don't either.
Dee Blanchard has a real interest in voodoo and a real interest in witchcraft, and she actually has a tattoo on her right leg.
Did she really have that big of an interest, or was it Gypsy Rose creating the narrative from reading her Southern Gothic novels and trying to create her own Southern Gothic type situation?
You can see it in some of the crime scene photos that are quite gruesome, but you can see the tattoo. It's hard to make it out perfectly, but sort of looks like a wizard. It might be a witch. It's something to do with witchcraft. And so how is this an important narrative? Well, it's an important narrative because when Gypsy runs away at age 19 and she returns and her mother chains her to the bed, several weeks later, Gypsy tells us that her mother puts a, quote, voodoo hex on her. Her mother gets a mason jar. I think I just lost Lauren. I'll keep going. I assume she'll be back. Anyway, so Dee Dee gets a mason jar. She puts a picture of Gypsy in it. She puts a picture of Dan in it. Dan is the boyfriend with whom she has run away. She puts a cow's tongue in the mason jar, and she puts a little bit of menstrual blood, of Gypsy's menstrual blood, in the mason jar. She takes the mason jar and she puts it out back of the house. I presume this is the house in Missouri. So, I was asking Lauren, do you think this mason jar is still there? I wonder if it is. Anyway, she goes out back. She performs this witchcraft ritual. She buries the mason jar, and before she does
I've heard Amber from Into the Weeds has said that she wants to go find that mason jar, because we have covered this actually over on our channel. We've talked about the voodoo and the hoodoo and the voodoo, and Gypsy Rose talking about her mother doing this. But we also talked about this is a storyline in one of VC Andrews' Ruby series. This is a literal storyline.
she puts a note in there, and in the note says, "You will never find love, and you will never be happy." And the reason I think this is an interesting narrative and it doesn't get enough attention is because it's similar to the witches in Macbeth, in the sense that the witches in Macbeth have a prophecy for Macbeth, which is that he's going to murder the king and then he will become king and he will rule over Scotland. The prophecy that Dee Dee has for Gypsy is that she will never find love and she will never be happy. And the reason this is relevant is because if you watch the Prison Confessions, Gypsy talks about that hex more than anything else.
She talks about it because she made it up, John. She made up this. We here it is, the flowers in the attic. We went over onto 1980 millennials, but we were having problems with our mic that day. But I did do a live on my own where I went over the information that I found. But we also, here's the link if you want to head over to 1980 millennial, and
they moved off the bayou, which was about from 2000 to, I think they left in 2003 or 2004.
Gotcha.
I can't remember the exact year.
Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us today. And we also have Amy from Para Women Radio. Hey, Amy.
Hey there. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Amy covered the Gypverse a little bit back, like, what was it, Amy, a year ago?
Yeah, I stopped about this time last year covering it.
Yep, and Amy has read the VC Andrews Flowers in the Attic stuff, and so I thought...
So I added my 2 cents. I went over and I used ChatGPT, and we brought it all up, and we talked about it, and I seriously believe that a lot of the storyline in her narrative comes from VC Andrews.
Gypsy is, I don't want to say obsessed, but she's very, very influenced by this voodoo hex that Dee Dee has put on her. So what you have here is largely, I don't really understand witchcraft, and I don't necessarily, believe in the paranormal, but for our purpose tonight, I think you have something similar.
So he doesn't believe in it. He doesn't understand it, but he's going to talk about it for at least 15, 20 minutes now. That makes a lot of sense. Again, we are building a case, and I believe that it's very dangerous for these type of people who claim to be the therapists, the psychologists, the doctors, and they still have clientele out there, and they're coming on being the experts, telling us about these things, which he has no clue and idea about. It's dangerous.
Placebo effect. That the important point here is that Gypsy Rose believes the hex, and it influences her life to a very large degree. She can't stop talking about this hex. And in many ways, Gypsy wants to overcome this hex, and she wants to prove her mother wrong, right? And that's why she talks about it so much. So no one has talked about the importance of witchcraft in the case of Gypsy Rose. I'm the first one that's going to promote this narrative tonight. So I want to begin with this narrative because I could argue.
What are you talking about? Everybody has talked about this, John. I've talked about it. I know that Into the Weeds has talked about. Anybody who covers the Gypsy Rose Blanchard case has talked about it. God. Ah! Why do I let them get me so mad? Oh, look at, there's Kay Vallow, Woodcock, supporting. Lots of people of Cajun descent believe in voodoo. Like, what's wrong with you, John?
That one of the
I know what's wrong with them, so that was a facetious question.
reasons, maybe a large reason that Gypsy Rose decides to commit murder is because this hex, this voodoo hex, to her is very fatalistic in the sense that she believes it's binding and she cannot overcome it unless her mother is dead.
I don't believe that she
and
believes
because she
it.
feels that way, putting aside all the previous maltreatment and just focusing on this hex, if you combine
but I
this,
actually secretly hope that her mother did do that, because I just don't think Gypsy Rose Blanchard at this point deserves love. I don't feel like she has made amends. Yeah, she did whatever time, but she slinged and slid mud and used a shady lawyer and has been shady all throughout it. And I don't like, she scratches my mother wound in ways that make me want to, like, I had to stop covering it. Just couldn't handle it. Couldn't hack it. She drives me crazy.
hex with all the other things all the other competing narratives we're going to talk about, I think you'll find, or I could argue, if I'm starting with competing narratives, I would argue that this particular narrative has way more influence and power than people have recognized, including probably Gypsy Rose. And that
Do you think he's ever going to get to the narrative? Do you ever think he's going to start talking about it?
Part of her scheme to commit murder has to do with this hex, because even now, as she goes in the outside world and she's released from prison, she can't stop talking about this. She can't stop talking about the hex. She can't stop talking about the fact that she needs to find love, so much so that she gets married in prison, and she can't stop talking about the fact that she has to find this happy end.
Does she really talk about the hex that much now that I'm thinking about it? I mean, I feel like she talks about other things way more. Way more. It's one of the things, but I don't think it's like the things she's hammered home. It's the thing you're hammering home, but I don't think it's the thing she hammers home.
Ending. She wants the Disney ending.
Well, yeah.
So that's where we're going to start. I think that, so in that sense, my first narrative here has to do with witchcraft. I'm actually going to read, from the book.
Oh, good, a book.
This book is called This is Shakespeare. It's by Emma Smith. It's a wonderful book for those of you who love Shakespeare. Emma Smith is a Shakespeare scholar who teaches at Oxford University. Of course, I can't quote anyone else than a British Shakespeare scholar from Oxford without doing justice to this topic. But she has a chapter on Macbeth, which is really interesting and it's brilliant. And I'm going to quote from Emma Smith's book. This is Shakespeare. She says, this is page 241. Emma Smith says, well, let me set this up. She essentially says that Shakespeare is interested in three explanations for why Macbeth commits his murder. The first one has to do with the individual. So it has to do with individual personality and the role that a personality plays potentially in murder. The second element that Emma Smith points out has to do with other people and the influence of like family and other people in one's lives, colleagues, and how they influence someone's decision to commit murder. And since I just talked about witchcraft, I'm going to pick up with her third and final reason. Page 241, she says, quote, and finally, there are causes that are supernatural or metaphysical in origin, a category that includes...
At this point, Lauren's not even looking up. Remember how she gets mad when Dr. Jan doesn't look at the camera? At this point, she has been looking down for quite some time.
God, the devil, and their intermediaries, including magicians and witches. Macbeth presents a similar convergence of models of causation and agency. Is this a story in which Macbeth willingly or unwillingly directs the action of his own play? Question mark. Or is it better understood as a story in which he is acted upon by other people? Question mark. Might we see him puppeted by supernatural forces beyond his control? Question mark. These possible explanations coexist in Macbeth, a play that is more interested in exploring its own competing ideologies rather than in explaining them. So I know, again, I apologize. I said we're going to have a high-level discussion.
I don't know. I just fell asleep there, and I think Lauren just woke up.
I think this is one of the difficulties of the Gypsy Rose case, is that it's very much like Macbeth, in the sense that, I'm going to quote Emma Smith again, it's more interested in a way, like Macbeth, there's more of an interest in exploring the competing ideologies than in explaining them. Because there's, in the end here, there's no final explanation. There's multiple explanation and there's multiple narratives, and we'll get to that. And that's precisely, according to Emma Smith, that's what Macbeth is about. That Shakespeare isn't really interested in saying, this is why the murders happened. He's interested in saying, these are some competing narratives. So let's consider, if we're going to look at that, let's consider some of those narratives. Should we start with, are you there, Lauren? Oh,
I am here.
Okay.
Yes, you're doing great, babe. I'm listening along with everyone else. I'm like, go
okay.
on.
I thought I lost you there for a second. So,
Yeah.
let's start with.
I think you lost us all there. While you were doing that, I had to take my butt over to ChatGPT and I asked, how alike was it? And they said the case of Gypsy Rose Blanchard and Macbeth aren't identical stories. And then I said, Dr. John seems to think they are, and I just don't agree. And it says, yeah, I get why you're saying that. If Dr. John is selling Gypsy equals Macbeth, that's a stretchy yoga pose, not a solid comparison. Here's the cleanest way to explain why it does not map well. So the Macbeth analogy breaks the core motive mismatch. Macbeth is fundamentally about ambition and power. The killing is a ladder climb. In the Gypsy Rose case, the center gravity is control, captivity, and escape. Who's being tempted, the guilt arc. I mean, it just doesn't match up to me. Does it match up to you guys? Does it really match up? Yeah, I know, Lauren. I'm here. I'm just sleeping like the rest of us. I mean, I'm just paying attention like the rest of us, Dr. John. Dr. Yawn. We don't call you Dr. Yawn for nothing.
Narrative about, so for those of you who watched the Prison Confessions, there was a nurse on there. I don't remember her name. She was a nurse and a lawyer, and she has some expertise in Munchausen's by proxy. Her narrative is that this is Stockholm Syndrome. And I know other people have talked about that or asked me that question on chat. And so Stockholm Syndrome essentially is that the victim begins to identify with the captor. The victim oftentimes might fall in love with the captor. The victim, in some sense, feels that their very survival depends upon the captor. And her explanation was essentially that this is a version of Stockholm Syndrome, that she has legitimate fear of getting out, and she feels stuck, and she believes the only way out is to murder her mother. So I would say that
I just heard a child cough. Did you guys just hear that child cough? Which means the son is in the room with one of them while he's listening to this.
So,
oh my gosh. And they want to make Christina the guilty one for scaring the child. They want to make, what's his name? Chad Daybell, the scary one. Well, ma'am and sir, don't have your son nearby while you're talking about Gypsy Rose Blanchard murdering her mother. Gosh.
To murder her mother. So I would say that there definitely are elements of Stockholm Syndrome in this case. That it's hard to deny that Gypsy Rose felt like a captive. She felt like a hostage. There's no question that she over-identified with her mother. There's no question that she sought her mother's attention and love. So I think all that's true. I think there are elements of Stockholm Syndrome in this case. But let's consider an alternative perspective here too, though, that Stockholm syndrome mainly applies to adults. And Gypsy Rose, this is her mother. She grew up with her, right? So I guess you
Right.
can argue that means there's more dependency. But I mean, but still, it's not a great fit in the sense that
Yeah, she was probably going to come as Chad Daybell's date, right? Ugh.
that by the time
Look
Gypsy
at
Rose
all
becomes
these, look at all of this, though. They are raking in the money here. I bet you they miss these days where they were getting all this money from their hidden gems.
an adult, she starts becoming more independent, right? She starts challenging her mother more, even though her mother doesn't know it, that she actually runs away. So, her running away shows that she wasn't completely identified with
I mean, Lauren misses the days where she sits there and does nothing, but it does look like they don't have Gray Bay at this point because I see her running the board. In between whatever she's reading on her phone, she will look up from time to time and throw up a few positive comments.
her mother. Even though, she may have felt like a hostage, she may have felt stuck. She still believes that she has the freedom to run away and to express herself. Also, she's getting on all her mom's devices, computer, cell phone. She's using all of these at night when her mom's sleeping. So she's sneaking around.
She's using them all day long, John. All day, 24/7, using them together. That was a fabricated lie. Well, maybe just think about, like, if she said one lie, couldn't it all be lies? Just like you, with your one or two lies, couldn't it all be lies?
And she's being a little rebellious. That's not someone who's completely.
And, I'm shocked. We don't usually see Lauren showing cover. Like, she usually has shit up to here. So this is very strange that we're seeing her tatas.
Compliant. That's not someone who's completely a hostage and obeying by all the rules. Is that someone who's expressing themselves? So that's someone who has some measure of free will and choice.
Okay.
That's someone too who's not necessarily afraid in the sense that
I think I'm gonna have to go make some coffee. Actually, thank you for that stimulant suggestion. So I am listening, but I'm just in the next room. I'm gonna throw some coffee together. Who wants coffee? Who needs stimulants? Because this is getting to be a lot.
she probably knows if she gets caught that her mom will admonish her in some way, but she doesn't seem to care. She gets caught with electronic devices, when she runs away with Dan when she's 19. And then even though she's caught and punished and physically harmed, she continues to do it.
Lies.
She continues to get on Facebook accounts. She continues to get on her mom's computer.
Lies. They're all lies. This is just like, but okay, it was a year and a half ago, but still, it was a year and a half ago. I knew a year and a half ago that the vast majority of what you were saying is lies. Okay, but anyway.
Right. So I, there are elements of Stockholm syndrome here. I don't know if that's a perfect fit. I think it might explain some of the crime, but not all of it. So again, like the reason why this case is so difficult is because now I've given you two explanations and I've argued that both of them have some validity. Right. So we're going to keep going because it's important to show people that the complexity of this situation makes it so difficult. Let's talk about, somebody wrote to me and said, well, isn't this a case of battered women syndrome? So this is another competing narrative. Battered women syndrome was developed by Lenora Walker, and it's based upon Martin Seligman's ideas of learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is a version of operant conditioning, which I talked a little bit about last week. But the idea in learned helplessness, the idea is that Seligman basically took some animals. He took some dogs, he put them in cages, he shocked them through a variable reinforcement schedule. And since the dogs didn't know when they were going to get shocked and when they weren't going to get shocked, they essentially gave up. So they didn't try to get out of their cages, or they didn't try to move to other areas where they had more freedom because they felt like no matter what, they were going to get shocked. And they simply gave up trying because there was a certain amount of helplessness that they developed.
Yeah.
So is this narrative? So the narrative here is battered women syndrome. Is there some elements of that? Yeah, I think there are. I think there is some degree of learned helplessness. But
Coercive
again,
control, someone writes too.
what's that?
Coercive control, someone writes.
Yeah, of course,
Well,
we'll get. Yeah, that's another
Oh.
that's another competing narrative we'll get to. But there's differences. So the argument against learned helplessness is that Dee Dee Blanchard wasn't physically abusive. There were no actual shocks. There was no slapping her, which occurred when she was 19. There was no physical abuse. There was no putting her in a cage. I mean, she was restrained, but Dee Dee never specifically grabbed her and held her against her will, physically restrained her. So in other words, like this idea of actually shocking. So in the Zolliman experiments, there's an actual shock that harms these animals. There's no shocks that are being administered to Gypsy Rose. And I know people are going to push back. One of the biggest criticisms we received last week was, you guys don't understand that Gypsy Rose was being physically abused before the age of 19.
Oh yeah, right.
So
do you want me to read some of those comments?
Why don't you read one of those comments if you can?
You got a lot of pushback. Some people were saying, "How dare you ask the question? Why didn't she stand?" When actually it was Aaliyah and others that asked the question, and you posed it and helped answer it throughout the entire episode. Some people told you to go back to the patriarchy that you came from and learn about victims. And yeah. So when you said that, I was like, "Whoo!" But let's read a couple of these things. So
does she think that's funny? Because I think they both think it's funny. At this point, they haven't gone too far with their 9.5 hour live. So they think this kind of shit is funny. And apparently the gems think it is too, because what do we got in here? Hello from Brazil, buckle up. Dee Dee physically abused Gypsy. Same, really respect the talk in this feed. Is it fair to say she had her childhood stolen, but she was also given a childhood mentally abused? So I don't know. Nobody's saying anything like that.
And yeah, a lot of people have gotten upset that you mentioned there was no physical abuse. That was one of our biggest pushbacks.
Somebody told me I set back victims' rights 10 years.
Yeah, well, maybe you did. No, just kidding.
I hope not.
I hope not. Yeah, you would feel very.
You didn't do that until you're 9.5 hour alive. I mean, so you're good for now. But when you hit the 9.5 hour live, nah.
Bad if you did that. We are 4 victims here. Let me explain it this way too. A lot of people pointed out, well, medication and surgeries are abuse. Well, you know what? I'll read these comments from our listeners. Here's one from Chaos 9495.
Actually, could you read the other one, please?
Oh, you want me to read the other one first?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, Chaos. You're next. Melissa Fisher. Her mom had been physically abusive before she was 19, along with her grandpa, abusing her and molesting her. How do you expect her to not fear for her life? Even without her mother verbally saying she was going to do something to her, she still had reasons to be scared for her safety. Do you really think nothing had happened? And just because she tried to escape that her mom physically abused her, you really think that is where it started, Dr. John?
Well, this is a really important issue, by the way, because Gypsy's argument for killing her mother is essentially that she was desperate and she was afraid. Last week, I pointed out that I thought the fear had more to do with attention seeking, that it had more to do with her mother removing her love, removing her attention. And I talked about the example with the cat. But
I mean, I hate to say this, but I agree with Dr. John, but I really think that some of the comments that they're getting, the pushback that they're complaining about, are actually from the Gypsy Rose Blanchard. She has this whole camp that goes around and they will comment on your lives, on your videos. Gypsy Rose Blanchard herself goes under fake names and comes in and says bullshit. So I wouldn't be shocked if that wasn't Gypsy Rose Blanchard under a sock account saying those type of things and getting this this ego-driven ha 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 you guys hate us type situation that we're getting here from them. And it's probably from Gypsy Rose Blanchard herself.
Gypsy Rose is actually the one who tells us that there was no physical abuse until she ran away at age 19. Could you play that?
Yeah, I recorded it. John found it and showed it to me. It's on the Prison Confessions. I've got my I have my voice memo. I'll just play it right in my mic. Tell me if this works.
My mother never laid a hand on me until my attempt to run away.
Let me play that one more time. I think I had it in the wrong spot.
My mother never laid a hand on me until my attempt to run away.
Could you hear that?
Play it one more time, please.
I don't know if I'm holding it in the right spot.
Yeah, I could hear it.
My mother never laid a hand on me until my attempt to run away.
My mother never laid a hand on me until my attempt to run away. Gypsy Rose.
And not only did Gypsy Rose said that, so she said that in episode 3 of the Prison Confessions. You'll find it there. Not only does she say that her mother never laid a hand on her, which means her mother was never physically violent or physically aggressive with her until she tried to run away when she was 19. So she doesn't say her age, but we know she was 19 when she ran away. It wasn't until then that there was any actual physical violence or physical abuse. And she actually says later, she says, my mother was very kind to me. I mean, putting aside all the medical stuff, she says, my mother could be very affectionate and kind to me. Right? And so that doesn't mean that she wasn't abused. I'm not arguing that.
But go ahead.
But the but is that if the question is, did Gypsy Rose fear for her life? Was there an imminent fear for her safety in her life? I think that there were fears. I think that there were bodily fears for her bodily safety, but that's different than fears for her life. I think there were fears that she would undergo unnecessary medical procedures. I think there were fears that her mother was overly controlling. There were fears that she was too dependent upon her mother. There were a lot of fears.
She would never.
I don't think there were fears of the medical. I think there were fears that her mother was going to kick her out, that the money train was over, and there's proof that she wanted that house. She thought she was going to get that pink house. That pink house that she murdered her mother in. She thought she was going to get that, and she still has things from that house because her stepmother went there and cleaned out that pink house, and so Gypsy Rose has all of her belongings from that time, and her mother's too.
There are fears you'd never find love or have a regular life.
But we're not talking about that. I mean, so the question is, can those fears, can the fear of your mother withdrawing love lead to murder? I mean, yeah, I guess so, but it's a different fear. It's a different fear than a fear that someone is going to kill you, is going to murder you, right? And so that's what we're talking about here. Gypsy Rose just told us, her own words, there was no physical abuse in this relationship.
You guys, the abuse that Gypsy Rose went through was more of abuse of if your mother was a criminal. If your mother liked to stretch the truth and get free trips and a free house and stuff like that. That's where the abuse was. There was nothing physical. Her mother was just trying to figure out what was wrong with Gypsy Rose, which we've gone through this. It's a chromosome deficiency. They used to put those type of people, Gypsy Rose Blanchard, with the chromosome deficiency in the freak shows. Do you remember? They used to be called pinheads. That's what Gypsy Rose has. And so they had never known what it was. They had never been able to diagnose it up until the point, like ever, for anybody. They just discovered what it was called, and her mother was taking her from doctor to doctor trying to figure these things out because she couldn't eat. She was throwing stuff up. Her teeth were rotting out. She had her salivas. She needed to have some of her saliva removed because she was just a drooly mess. She was just drooling all the time. Part of what she has, her chromosome deficiency, is hypersexuality. So her mother was just trying to control Gypsy Rose's hypersexuality. I mean, her mother was dealing with a lot. So yeah, there was abuse in the sense that she was like using her illnesses when they were trying to diagnose what it was, they would say like, oh, maybe it's cerebral palsy. And then she would tell the world, oh, she has cerebral palsy before it was even diagnosed. That's the type of shit Dee Dee was doing. But she wasn't making her sick. She wasn't giving her stuff to be sick. She was trying to find out what the sickness was, and she wasn't stopping. So I think we've all been abused to a certain point growing up. So it's just the level of how abusive was this mother. And I just really, and Gypsy Rose was becoming the abuser. She was abusing Dee Dee. So, I mean, Dee Dee literally said to Gypsy the night of the murders, don't kill me. Don't kill me.
Until age 19, after she ran away. I think her mother, as an adult, when Gypsy Rose becomes an adult, I think her mother definitely feels more desperation, because she knows that Gypsy Rose is her meal ticket, and that if she loses control of her, she's essentially losing control of her lifeline.
Yeah, not only her meal ticket and her lifeline, but what will come out, what will be exposed, right? What frauds and money and crimes will be exposed. So yes, I'm sure her mother felt a lot of desperation as Gypsy grew older and more independent and started running away.
So
this is what I am talking about. I had a creator panel. Junie, come on now. You've been so good. Yeah, you're a cutie. This was a creator panel that I did with her channel's different now. I don't remember the name of her channel now, but at the time it was Katie from Down the Rabbit Hole at Bedtime and Toddy One Skip, and we were talking about the microcephaly
order that Fancy is claiming Gypsy has. Like, what do you think is important about it?
I think it's important.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think it's important, and then I'll let you answer, Toddy. I think it's important because it will. She says it doesn't affect her, but in reading it, it causes excessive drooling. She had to have some of her salivary glands removed. It causes excessive hyperactivity. You know, she's pretty active. It causes excessive hypersexuality. It causes just a lot of problems. It would cause the need for it could cause the need for a feeding tube. She had a feeding tube. So I feel like it would explain all of the reasons why she had all of these medical issues and why she was having these, going to the ER and the mother realized like, oh, she's getting attention, but this isn't a very glamorous disease. So we're going to go with this and we can take her, you know, in and out of the hospital, and people are going to feel sorry for us, and we have a reason, but we're going to say it's another reason. And so I think that's why it's important.
I think that, to me, to be honest with you, I think that anything in that medical report, according to the person, you know, and this is me, I think that Fancy had the report, or listen, I'm going by what I heard, but I heard that there's nothing in that report that's actually true, that there's one document with her date of birth 3 times it's wrong. So to me, anything in that report, I can't trust it, because then you can pick and choose whatever you can trust. And
so this was when we were talking about the microcephaly. Oops. It says I lost, hold on. It says my browser lost touch with reality. No, it just said it lost contact. Hold on. Hold on. You coming over to say hi? No, you can't have any coffee. Nope. Yep, mommy gives you a lot, but no coffee. All right. Nope, that's not what I'm looking for. Hold on a second, you guys. Mommy's okay. Is Junie okay? What'd you do, baby? Mommy's trying to find us back where we were. Huh? You are a cutie. Yeah, so it was microcephaly.
The evidence is, and I mean, I'm getting the evidence from Gypsy Rose. So the evidence is that there was no physical abuse before 19. I don't even know, by the way. So there's these, when I do forensic interviews, I say this a lot, but when I do forensic interviews, I'm always looking for these little tells, these little moments that provide so much insight. And a lot of times the people who say these things, like Gypsy Rose during the interview, it's unintentional. They don't understand the ramifications of what they're saying. And
I have compromised, Junie and I'm letting him lick the spoon. Ah, this bird.
I definitely think this is one of those moments. And the reason I say that is because in the HBO documentary, she implies throughout that her fear was for her life. She implies that she says her mother slapped her mother hit her. She doesn't clarify. She clarifies it in the prison confessions, but she never clarifies that the slapping and the hitting and the tying her to the bed, all of that occurred after she ran away as punishment. None of that occurred prior to age 19. So there's very much this sense, like in the HBO documentary, that you're led to believe that the abuse was physical before 19. It wasn't. And she's very clear.
John, why would you believe that all of a sudden at 19, when she runs away and it's proven that she can walk, she can stand up, that Dee Dee, when she's in the worst health of her life, would suddenly become slappy and all of this other stuff? I don't understand why you're putting two together, but you're not subtracting two to come up with the right answer. Because why would you go along with that narrative but not the other narrative? Like, it makes no sense that you would be okay with this, but all of a sudden at 19, like, use your critical thinking. Don't you think that maybe she's lying? John, maybe? Perhaps, yes? But you know what I just did there? I'm never going to be invited on their show.
It's about the fact that years ago when that person cut me off, she could not handle my vulnerability and my raw emotion, and I'm still pissed.
I'm the victim! Remember? I'm the victim!
About that in the prison confessions. So
I like what Elizabeth says here. I think there was fear that she was not psychologically strong enough to free herself from her mother as long as her mother lived, but she was not at risk of dying physically.
Right. And so if we're talking about battered women syndrome, and if we're talking about learned helplessness, and if we're talking about Stockholm syndrome, oftentimes those explanations, those narratives will involve some physical threats to safety. That the offenders in those cases will restrain people, they'll harm people, they'll engage in aggression or violence, they'll push, they'll hit, right? Even in the learned helplessness experiments, they're being shocked. Gypsy Rose is not being shocked. She's not being restrained. I mean, she's being held captive, but she's not being restrained until 19 when her mother changed her to the bed. So
why do you keep doing this, John? Is she? Gosh.
So this is confusing. And I'm not arguing, by the way, let me go back to this competing narrative point. I'm not arguing that these aren't accurate. I'm not saying that there wasn't Stockholm syndrome or learned helplessness.
This is actually the most passionate that I've seen John in a while, but he's still faltering. He's doing his flip-floppy things. He doesn't believe that Gypsy Rose was abused, but he's got these hidden gems riding his ass, so he's going to be wishy-washy, flippy-floppy.
Helplessness or battered women syndrome. I'm simply saying that there are a lot of narratives here that are competing for attention, and all of them have a little bit of validity. So I guess the way I would describe it is that all of these are true and none of them are true. You know, I know that's a contradiction. This is going to take me back to Macbeth. Fair is foul and foul is fair. It's hard to know what's accurate here. They're all a little bit accurate.
She wasn't.
And so let's dive in.
She have a disability. She was fine. It has come out that she lied to her mother about not being able to walk. She lied to her mother and her doctors. She's the one that told them she couldn't walk. They were worried about her, but she could walk. It's in her journals. It's in her prison stuff. It's in these videos that have come out. She lied. She was lying to people. She could walk. She was the only one that knew it. She was lying.
To let's dive into what I call the Disney story or the standard story. And this is the story that Gypsy Rose herself tells. Gypsy Rose tells us in the HBO documentary, I think it was HBO. I've watched so much of this stuff, I'm losing track of my sources a little bit.
You need to just throw everything away about Gypsy Rose. What you think about her, just throw that shit in the trash. Just like the Epstein files, everything that you thought you knew about the world, just throw that shit in the trash, because she lied. She lied about everything, and it's come out.
But I believe it was HBO. She talks about her love of the Disney movie Tangled. And I don't remember when that movie came out, but she watched this movie repeatedly, and she identified with it, and she loved it. And we know that Gypsy Rose went on trips to Disneyland. She went on trips to Make-A-Wish, that she had kind of this obsession with Disney and these fantasies about finding her Prince Charming, right? All this stuff. So the Gypsy Rose story is essentially a version of Tangled, which is, if for those who have seen the Disney movie, that Rapunzel is being held captive in the tower by Gothel, and Gothel is sort of the evil witch, and Gothel restrains her and keeps her captive.
This is one of Gypsy Rose's favorite, the Tangled. I think she even quotes this in the prison confessions. She loves this narrative
because her hair
provides. Don't get me wrong, Dee Dee Blanchard was not a saint either. And I say this: if Dee Dee Blanchard were alive today, I believe that some criminal justice should be coming her way. But she's not alive today, and she was definitely a victim of this woman who plotted and planned out her mother's death, attempted to do it multiple times. Not just twice, many more times. And she was lying from the get. I don't even think I believe that Gypsy Rose, that her mother was feeding her grandmother Roundup. That is a scene directly from the Ruby from V.C. Andrews. Somebody was being fed Roundup or poison of some sort. It wasn't Roundup, sorry. It was poison. And then they were also pretending not to walk, and they were in a wheelchair. Gypsy Rose has taken her narrative from Southern Gothic, and what was the mother supposed to do? Not believe that her daughter couldn't walk? I think that Dee Dee knew she could walk to a certain extent, but not for long periods of time. And there's some truth to that, because the microcephaly makes her limbs weak. So it is harder for Gypsy Rose to get around. There's this video out of her out in the wild where she is walking really weird, and she's using the stroller to kind of almost like a walker situation, because she does have problems walking long distances. And it's probably one of the reasons why she's into fitness and exercise, because she needs to. And the older she gets with the condition she has, if she doesn't keep her core strength up, it will be an issue for her.
Provides her with eternal youth. So as long as Rapunzel has her long hair and she's in the tower, then Gothel, the evil witch, can live forever, right? So obviously she doesn't want to let her out, and she normalizes everything that's going on, even though she's captive. I should point out, by the way, that there's no physical abuse in the tower. It's clearly child maltreatment, but
clearly, and she's
clearly abusive, right? It's clearly abusive, but she can't kill Rapunzel, because then she loses the hair that keeps her alive, right? And so
Correct.
you have in a way, it's interesting because you have a similar dynamic with Dee Dee, that Dee Dee doesn't want to kill. In fact, Gypsy Rose is Dee Dee's prized possession.
Correct. And helps keep her alive, and is her meal ticket.
Right, keep her alive.
She was doing these illegal things for the joy of Gypsy Rose. Although we know that Dee Dee liked to shine. She was one of those people that followed bands around, and there are some pictures of her at rock bands. So she was, what are those called? Groupies? She was a groupie?
She keeps getting attention. She keeps making money on this thing, right? All of that. So in Rapunzel, the final outcome is that she kills the Wicked Witch. Rapunzel kills the Wicked Witch.
Yeah, she does.
She works with the
learning disabilities.
I don't know. His name is.
Because of it, I think that's why we see all the signs around her house on how to take care of her baby. She does have some of those learning disabilities, but every disability that she had, Dee Dee didn't put onto her. She already had them. And what Gypsy is trying to make it seem like is that her mother put these disabilities on her, and Gypsy Rose either had the disabilities or was lying to her mother about added disabilities that she didn't have. Now, do I think Dee Dee's a saint? No. But do I think Gypsy Rose is evil? Yeah, I do. I really do. I think Gypsy Rose is a danger to society. She's a danger to young girls. I have seen signs. I mean, we know that she offered up her 13-year-old daughter to Nick, her V card. So we've got the PDF with Gypsy Rose. I mean, I'd be very interested to see if she's in the Epstein files somehow.
Flynn Rider.
I mean, Chillicothe is in there, and so I just showed you at the very beginning that there's a connection to the Epstein files and Chillicothe. So, but I mean, I wonder how many of us have brushed past people that are in the Epstein files, like the 5 degrees of Kevin Bacon type Epstein file. That would be interesting to know.
Rider, sort of the paramour who rescues her from captivity, and then she's reunited with her royal family at the end. I think that Gypsy Rose definitely is influenced by this story, and so her narrative is...
I see her as a big issue in the world, that she is now 36 years old. She committed the crime at 24 years old. She has said that she is a liar. She doesn't tell the truth, that she knows how to get her way. She never does rarely does her own dirty work. She always has people do her dirty work for her. So that's an even more dangerous person. She killed her fucking mother. That's a dangerous person. And at what point do we hold the people accountable, even if they were abused, which I don't think she was abused any more than anybody else in this world. When do we hold those people accountable? Because most abusers were abused. So at what point do we hold them accountable? And at what point do we stop the madness and not go back to sleep? Because she offered up her daughter. She offered up her daughter. Not her sons, her daughters. Protect the son, offer up the daughter. And she's got some sick thoughts, some really sick thoughts.
That she's
she is attracted towards younger people because that's her mentality. She's very young. She stopped developing. And those type of people are drawn to teenagers. And that's who she's drawn to. And she was on some app, her and Ken, where the kids were underage, and you would like hop from person to person, and like there was a timer, and you would have a timed conversation, and they were doing weird shit, doing signals, and using those weird words that we now know are PDF words. Like, I don't know if they used the pizza and the hot dog and the cheese pizza and all that, but they were using weird words that were known words for these type of things. So I don't believe for a second that she's not involved in that stuff. But this is all alleged, my opinion, and all for entertainment purposes only. We urge you to go out there and do your own.
Held captive against her will. That's all true. And that she has, there's such fear and desperation.
Why maybe
that
I stopped
the only way out
her. I think you can see why, because she enrages me.
Is to murder her mother. To do that, she recruits Nick. I guess she sees Nick like Flynn Rider in the movie.
Right.
Nick hesitates to help her.
Also, I need to disengage from this because I'm at this point where I'm trying really hard not to put my thoughts, feelings, and whatever on other people. And I feel like that's what I've just done for the last 20 minutes. And I'm really sorry. I'm just like very passionate about Gypsy Rose and the truth getting out there. and just all the lies that this woman tells, and the money that she gets from her lies, and that's like just the biggest form of injustice for me. And the fact that she gets away with it really, really gets to me in the same way that Lauren gets away with it, right? It's very similar feelings between I feel very similar between Lauren and Gypsy Rose, that they even have a platform, that they even have people continuing to buy their narrative, that they're platformed. It drives me crazy.
Where initially Nick pushes back, Nick is very reluctant, but Gypsy Rose is relentless, and Gypsy Rose pushes this idea of murder. Nick finally agrees. He carries out the murder and convincing Nick that.
I really feel like we all have to step into people of being, walk our talk. And so it's really important. I know it's my channel, and I really thank you for saying that. But it's just really important to me that we all become our own critical thinkers. And I can't say, you guys should be critical thinkers and sit here and try to make you think the way I think for 20 minutes. So I really am sorry for that. But I hope you just understand. I'm just like vomiting information, and this isn't even the live that I'm going to do. I'm getting it all together to put it together in one cohesive thought. But yeah,
that this is the only way they can ever be together, which is what Nick wants more than anything. And then she has her happily ever after. So I think in order to make that narrative work, number one, you have to show that there's a huge amount of fear. You have to show that there's an inordinate amount of fear that justifies murdering her mother. That's one thing. The other thing is you somehow have to justify, Gypsy Rose has to justify her role. In other words, she has to blame Nick, essentially, so that she's not culpable. This story works as long as she's not actually performing the action. So,
and this kind of reminds me of like Chad Daybell, or something like similar thing. Like, oh, well, if I, get Alex Cox to do my, anyway, go ahead.
That's
Right.
a good point.
Let's stick to Rapunzel.
Actually, that's a good point. And God damn it, if it doesn't piss me off that these two are making good points. It doesn't make me mad that Dr. Yan is on to something here. He's still an idiot, but he at least gets it, some of it. But he doesn't have the balls enough. He hasn't gotten his balls out of Lauren's pocketbook to stand up to the hidden gems and say, I believe she wasn't a victim. But he can't seem to bring himself to do that.
You can't tell this Disney story. And we'll get into why this is problematic in a minute, but I'm gonna read some quotes from the prison confessions about Nick. This is a quote from Gypsy Rose. She said, quote, "Yeah. Had I asked a responsible person to commit murder."
Another thing I want to do is I want to look at the cases that we've been following and pair them up into the Epstein files and see how many of those cases, just like I said, the Gypsy Rose, have brushed up against them. Because N.B. Gilbert said, I would bet you that we have all brushed against people that are in the Epstein files, and I would too. How many women do you know that have not been assaulted in one way or another by a man? It appears to be rampant. Yeah, I don't know. Let me think. Do I know anybody? I mean, I'm sure I know somebody that hasn't been assaulted, but I don't know offhand. I can't think of anybody offhand. Which, my big flex is I say, well, I'm just glad I wasn't assaulted as a child, because I don't think I could have handled it as a child. So, I'm glad you like it, because sometimes I don't know if it's out of control or not, because I don't want to sound angry. I don't want to sound angry at the person I'm talking to. But a lot of passion comes out with this stuff, and I am outraged. I'm like, I think I am moving out. I was in the stages of grief, and I was more in the shocked So I just needed last week to do, because I got back into meditation in the morning. I'm meditating. I meditated every day this last week. Like I just have to be able to center myself, because I feel like, I don't know how to say this without sounding crazy, but I feel like this is what I have been warming up to my entire life. I feel like this is the reason why I came here. I feel like this is why all the darkness that happened to me happened. This is why I went into sociology, psychology. This is why I traveled around. I mean, I just feel like I've been warming up for this moment my entire life, and I think we all have, and I'm going to use my voice, and I'm not going back to sleep, although I am a little bit afraid. I will say this, that I think that we're all being monitored. I do think that we're all being monitored, and that does scare me. But then I also think, well, they can't get us all. They can't get us all. So I'm going for it. So we're going to start talking about the Epstein files pretty soon.
The response would have been, no, I'm going to the authorities. But Nick was like, okay, I'm going to kill your mother. That's episode 4. So notice the sleight of hand there. You know, if this is said in one of my offender groups, I guarantee you every one of the offenders in that group would have jumped on that statement and said, you're evading responsibility. Right? Like, she's saying essentially that it was, even though Gypsy Rose is pushing, even though she's relentless in telling Nick, you need to do this or we're not going to be together, the one thing Nick wants more than anything else is to be with her. And remember, we talked about last week, Nick is autistic. He was diagnosed with autism according to his mother. He has the intellectual capacity of a 15, 16-year-old. She's pushing him. Nick knows that his prospects for a significant relationship are fairly limited, I think, or he senses that. He sees this as a bonanza. He sees this as his happily ever after. So he's getting, as Nick tells the investigator in the interrogation.
I accidentally saw a naked photo of Gypsy Rose, and that girl has a banging body. And for Nick, who I believe has, well, we know he is autistic pretty severely, and probably saw the attractiveness of the girl. And, you know, she comes off as being very young and innocent, but then has this sexual boom that she puts forward. Nick didn't stand a chance. He didn't stand a chance. Nick was made for Gypsy Rose. Nick was Gypsy Rose's #1 sucker, just like I believe Ryan Anderson, who is becoming even more annoying as the days go on. I mean, he's just over there on TikTok grifting away and still in denial about who Gypsy Rose Blanchard is. And if you don't know who Ryan is the simp that she married so that she'd have somewhere to live when she got out of prison. It's her ex-husband.
I would have done it. He says, quote, I would have done anything for her, even if that involved murder. But here we have Gypsy Rose with the sleight of hand, essentially blaming Nick and saying, well, why didn't Nick go to the authorities? Why did Nick agree to commit the murder, right? I mean, so the obvious question here for me is, why didn't Gypsy Rose back off? Why didn't, once Nick said let's figure out an alternative, why didn't Gypsy Rose stop?
Okay,
right?
You know what? It sounds like to me like Dr. Jan might be onto something. Let's go back to the first one and see what he was saying in this one. Again, remember, this is just building the case. I am putting together a Gypsy Rose hidden true crime mashup creator panel, and I am doing the research to get the case together. The building the case is just something that I do with my dragonflies to hang out with you as I'm getting the week's cases all in order. Once I finish the live, I will move it over to a dragonfly only membership. If you're interested in becoming a dragonfly, I would love to have you. I have the link in chat, and also I will put it over in the show notes. I think I saw Kim come in, and I think Kim will put it through chat as well. I think I saw Kim. but I'm not sure. I can't remember. And I also have a little something about it, but it's $3.99 a month, not $2.99. I've got to fix this.
And if you're not subscribed, why are you not subscribed? I would really, really, really love to have you as a power subscriber. If you really like my content, be sure to become a Dragonfly, and that's our membership, and it's $2.99 a month. I release all my videos early. We have special emojis over in the chat room. I kind of share things ahead of time with my Dragonflies, and I go live sometimes just for the Dragonflies. It's a way that I can support you guys and give you more content, and it's a way for you to support our channel. It's $2.99 a month, and I would love to have you.
And be sure to give this live a big old thumbs up for me. Thanks, guys.
If this topic or what we say interests you, it means that more people see this video. And thank you for subscribing. We have made the chat subscriber only tonight because it helps keep the chat slow. We've made it slow.
We have heard her. Like, see, listen to her. Their chat is moving so fast at this point with 144. Let's see. They had to slow down their chat. We know now they slow down their chat so that they can moderate it. But at this point, they're slowing down their chat because there's so many people talking. Hi, Amy. I have to watch you and Crusha's live still. I was so excited that you two did that creator mashup. I was like, this is the best creator mashup I've seen all week. So I'm really happy that you did that. And I can't wait to watch it. And I am going to be contacting you and Crusha regarding this live.
As well, if we need to make it even slower, let me know in comments. And if the chat gets too out of hand, let me know. I can even do subscriber only and like make it so it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes before people can comment, just to keep things clean. We're so grateful for all of you being here, and it is a big show tonight. And since I don't have a voice, I'm just going to hand this over to you, John.
Okay. Yeah.
I gotta look at their chat. I gotta take our chat out of the way so you guys can see. I want to see how fast their chat's moving.
So we're gonna dive.
Okay, so this is in the slowdown mode. I mean, yeah. If this doesn't tell you that whatever you're doing during their lives isn't causing them some boundaries to continuing to victimize people, allegedly, I don't know what is.
Into the case of Gypsy Rose.
Sorry, I was trying to word that so that, yeah, you know, I was trying to word that.
Blanchard. And I just want to preface this with a few ideas. Number one is...
Welcome to the Dragonflies. Just another human 4615. Thank you. It's really, really good to have you here. Yeah, exploiters. We're looking at the idea that how dangerous it is for John to come forward as this quote unquote psychologist, Dr. John, and still have clients that he is a doctor too, while spreading these false narratives. And he's covering the Gypsy Rose Blanchard case, and Gypsy Rose Blanchard just recently mashed up with a woman that has a lot of the same characteristics of John. She just like pontificates and throws around her big words, her big psychological words, and in the process is educating Gypsy Rose on how doing this. And I find it to be alarming and scary. And so I am creating this kind of mashup, and I'm going to invite some content creators on to talk about it. But, you know, we're doing a building the case, so we're getting our ducks in an order before we do that.
That our discussion may not always be popular tonight, but I think it's important. Our channel has always believed in providing our version of events, no matter what that is or where it leads us. And sometimes that's not always the most popular. We don't express the most popular ideas all the time.
And
But
it seems like Dr. John is for once onto something, because he's not buying the Gypsy Rose Blanchard narrative, but Lauren is still holding on to his balls tightly in her pocketbook and is not giving them back to him. And so he's not able to stand up to the hidden gems and say, hey guys, I don't believe Gypsy Rose Blanchard. He's not able to do that. He's his wishy-washy self, and that's what's happening.
but we express ideas
And we
that
got to speed them up because they're, talking slow per usual.
we think are accurate. So I just want to say that there may be some discussions tonight that are controversial, and I invite all of you guys to participate in those discussions.
And I hope you have sweet dreams when you get there. Thanks for becoming a dragonfly.
And having said that, I want to also say, before we begin this conversation, this episode, that I do have a lot of empathy for Gypsy Rose. I do believe that she was horrendously victimized by her mother.
Okay.
I believe that
I misspoke. But we did go backwards because he wasn't saying all that in the last one. He was not saying all that. And I know the last one was number 2. This was the first one they ever did. Look how matchy they are. They even got the blush matching. Oh, wait, maybe he doesn't have blush on.
She went through was
their lipstick the same. Their eyebrows. Her eyebrows really aren't touching the sky yet. They're not hitting the North Star. So I wonder at what point did she start? Maybe she had some work done and it just like raised it all up, because at what point did she start, her eyebrows start doing that?
indescribably painful and unnecessary.
They're a lot alike here.
And I believe that that the medical system did fail her, that every system failed her, and that this should have been and could have been caught so much earlier, that so many people could have prevented
Did
this.
every system fail her? How is a doctor supposed to tell you what's wrong when you are lying, when you're saying, no, I can't walk, but you can walk? When you're exaggerating the conditions that you have, when you're not brushing your teeth, you're eating pure sugar, but you're saying that my teeth, anyway.
So I have a tremendous amount of empathy for what she went through. There's no question in my mind that Gypsy Rose is a victim and she was abused. And I just want to set that straight before we begin this conversation. Because we're going to go down some paths here that might be a little controversial. I want to start by, now that I mentioned the victim part, I do think that in analyzing this case, I think it's important to consider two facets of this case. That there's the case of Gypsy as a victim of abuse, and then there's Gypsy as a murderer. And I think those are very different parts of this analysis, and they're important parts to consider. I think that Gypsy, the murderer, is quite different than Gypsy, the victim of abuse. So I will be separating those two parts of this analysis. But let's start with, there is a video from 2009, I believe, of Gypsy singing at an event for a cancer, is it the American Cancer Society? Okay.
The American Cancer Society, yes.
Okay. So if you could go ahead and please play that.
All right, here you go. There you go.
Okay, right. So for those of you who have watched Gypsy's prison confessions, and Lauren and I haven't watched all of it, by the way, because the last 2 episodes are airing tonight. In fact, they're airing during the show. So we haven't seen all of it. So in that sense, we might be a little
interesting that he hasn't seen it all yet. Here he is talking about it.
A little behind, but we have watched the documentaries, including the HBO documentary. We've looked at the interrogation videos. We've looked at just about everything we can, and we've watched the recent prison confessions. So that's where we're getting our information, in addition to some articles and some discussions in some groups. But we've looked at a wide array of sources. So I want to say that those are our sources.
Wow. What did you guys talk about? I don't even know what the topic was. I need to go in and look at it
Tonight. The question, so Gypsy Rose raises a really important question early on.
I mean, I'm coming up on 4 hours here, but it's just like, wow.
And that question is, she sees it as the most important question. It's a question she gets over and over again. And that question is, and I'm going to quote her here, this is from the prison confessions. She says, people ask her, quote, "Why didn't you just stand up?" And that's how she puts it. So, it's interesting that she doesn't say that the question is, why didn't you just stand up to your mother? She says, why didn't you just stand up? And there's a sense in which, ironically or interestingly enough, I think she's talking about two senses of standing up. One is standing up literally. In other words, getting out of her wheelchair and standing up and showing the world that she can stand. And by the way, Gypsy knows that she can stand. She knows this from a very early age. In fact, the reason she took to a wheelchair was because she was in a motorcycle accident with her grandfather, Claude, when she was 5 years old, and she scraped her leg. It was a fairly minor accident for her, but she scraped her leg, and then her mother saw that scrape. So her mother, Dee Dee, saw the scraped leg, and she used that to put Gypsy in a wheelchair. And from that moment forward, Gypsy never left the wheelchair, even though the family would see her bouncing on a trampoline, and the family would see her later when Dee Dee had an accident and Gypsy was around age 10, that Gypsy stayed with Claude again. And even though she had a feeding tube, she ate normally. She walked around the home, right? So there were plenty of instances where Gypsy was actually
I feel like this was an instance where she acted extra sick with her mother so that her mother would like basically wipe her ass, and her mother did. Like, the biggest disservice that Dee Dee ever did to Gypsy was letting Gypsy have all the control and doing all the shit that she did do for Gypsy Rose Blanchard. She really
Will the circle be unbroken by and by, low by